Hello.
Could you tell us your name?
Stephanie Hale.
Ms. Hale, what do you do for a living?
Currently, I'm a marketing coordinator at the hospital in Uvalde.
Uvalde Hospital?
Yes.
How long have you been doing that?
Since July.
And before that, what did you do?
I was a teacher.
Where were you a teacher?
Started in Calallen and then moved to Uvalde at Robb.
Okay. What did you do at Robb?
I was a third grade teacher.
At Robb Elementary School?
Yes, sir.
And was that true then, back on May 24th, 2022?
Yes, sir.
Could you just tell us what that morning was like? What were y'all doing?
We had awards in the morning, and then we went back to the classroom, and it was a pretty relaxed day. Watched movies, had snacks, and then I don't know how far you want me to go into that. Okay.
So what is Awards Day?
It happened quarterly, and they would get awards for like top AR readers, AB honor roll, citizenship awards, all of those things. So just celebrating the kids and their
Parents
achievements.
invited to?
Yes, sir.
And where does it take place?
The cafeteria?
Okay. And it's just people rotate in and out in the morning?
Yes, based on the grade levels.
And is it kind of a free day then for the kids?
Kind of, sort of, I guess. We have fun.
Okay. That's a day of fun?
Yes.
So when did y'all finish awards?
We had ours in the morning. It was, I couldn't really tell you, 9, maybe 10, 9, between 9 and 10, I guess.
What did you do after the awards?
We went back to the classroom for a little bit, and then until it was time for them to go to rotation at the library.
So you went to the library after you were in the classroom?
Yes.
And then next what did you do?
After I dropped them off, I went to a math interventionist room in the 4th grade building and looked at some math manipulatives, and then until it was time to pick my kids up from the library, and I actually picked them up about 10-15 minutes early that day so we could have extra recess.
So you got them out early to go have recess?
Yes.
Where's recess?
On the playground, I'm going to say maybe the south side of the school.
Okay, we'll take a look at that in a minute.
Okay.
I just kind of want to walk through the day first, okay? So you got out, you were headed for the playground on the south side of the school.
Yes.
And tell me what happened there.
We stopped at the classroom first to grab lunch boxes, use the restroom, and then we are walking to the playground, and it sounded like the trash, the dumpster was picking up the trash, and I thought to myself, that's weird, they usually do that in the morning.
What do you mean it sounded like a dumpster picking up trash?
Like the dumpster truck, you know how it picks it up and it dumps all the trash? I don't know, it makes a loud noise to me, so that's what it sounded like.
So that's what you heard?
Yes, at first.
And so it didn't ring a bell as to a concern or raise a red
I mean,
flag?
it was it was a little weird and odd, and I remember thinking to myself, that's strange, they usually do that in the morning. And then I just became, I guess, a little more aware of my surroundings.
Okay. Did you continue on to the playground?
Yes.
And did you get to the playground?
Yes.
And how long were you at the playground?
I'm not 100% sure, maybe 5 minutes,
A short
give or
period of
take.
time?
Yes, a short period of time.
What is it that disturbs your playground activity?
We heard sounds, and to me, I thought they were fireworks. That's what it sounded like. And then another teacher also said, that's kind of strange. And then I walked to, they had like bleachers in the middle of the playground so I could see my kids, and I didn't make it there until Coach Gonzales picked up his radio and started yelling for us to get inside.
Okay. So the combination of hearing these fireworks and Coach Gonzales, did you draw a conclusion from that?
Yes.
And what was that?
That there was gunfire.
Okay.
Something was wrong. You
So
could see it.
fireworks and Coach Gonzales makes you think not fireworks, guns.
Yes.
And
or
as you were
something.
trying to get inside, was there anything else that indicated to you that wasn't fireworks?
Yes, we could, when we were standing there, the dirt was kind of, you could see the dirt cloud up, kind of coming towards us. And then as we were all running into the classroom, I saw I don't know what to call him, horrible person, walking.
Just take your time, we can hold on.
Sorry. Walking towards the door.
Can you describe him for us?
He had all black, long hair, and a gun.
You saw a gun? Can you describe that for us?
I mean, I'm not really a gun person, but it's long and black, so.
And about this dirt being, would you say plowed up? I need to understand that a little better.
Like I don't know if you drop something in dirt or sand, I guess, and it kind of makes a cloud, and then I don't know how else to explain it.
Okay, and did you see one of those clouds or more than one?
More than one.
More than one. And so how many children did you have with you?
In my personal class, or all together?
Good question. Let's start with your class.
At the time, I wasn't 100% sure, but I think there was about 10 to 12 students.
With you?
Yes, the rest had left.
And there was another class out there?
There were several other classes on the playground.
At the time this puffing of dirt was going on?
Yes.
Do they all allowed to intermix them for that period
Yes.
of time? Okay. So the coach has given you instructions, you've had your own confirmations, you actually see somebody with a gun. Pretty stressful?
Yes.
Did it prevent you from acting?
No.
What did you do?
I yelled to the kids to get in the classrooms. The second grade teachers had opened their doors to let us in. And I went to the first classroom and I stood outside the door to make sure everybody had gotten off the playground.
So you got through the door before all your kids did?
Not all of them, but yes.
And so but you didn't go in?
No.
And why is that?
To make sure they were safe and inside.
And did you make sure? Did you make sure they were all safe inside before you went inside?
Yes.
And so when you went inside, what did you do?
I went to the corner of the teacher's classroom and at that point noticed I had only about 2 to 3. Sorry. Of my own students in there. And so realized that they were kind of spread out into other classrooms. And then,
Did that cause concern for you? Tell me about that.
I mean, you just worry, and I mean, I know that they were all in a classroom, but not knowing where or who they were with was concerning because they weren't with me.
So what did you do?
We sat there for a little bit and you could see we just kind of waited and tried to keep the kids calm. So we'd gone into a second grade classroom and a few of them were struggling to stay quiet. And
what's the idea of staying quiet?
don't talk, don't move, be still.
Is that part of the training that y'all had?
Yes.
You had training to stay quiet under what situations?
They just a lockdown.
A lockdown? Just would you go through with us then what a lockdown is and what you do?
So it's lock lights out of sight, you lock your doors, which should be, and then you turn the lights off and you're out of sight. You go somewhere in your classroom that is away from windows, doors, hidden as best you can.
And is that school-wide?
Yes.
So in the lockdown, if you go in any room, according to the lockdown procedures, the kids are going to be away from the door and away from the windows,
Yes.
in the dark
Yes.
and quiet.
Yes.
And you had a little trouble with people being quiet,
Yes.
and so what did you do?
I army crawled around the floor under these second graders' desk, and I did breathing with them. You go trace your hand and you breathe in and out as you go up and down your fingers. So I did that to 2 students, helped them calm as best they could.
So you learned a breathing technique
Yes.
to calm kids in stressful
I
situations?
mean, it's just a normal, I guess, teaching special ed. You learn, I guess, little tricks to help with anxiety and things like that.
Did it work?
Yes.
How quickly?
I couldn't give you an exact time.
Okay. Did you take any other action as you were waiting?
Yes, at one point the teacher, and I don't know her name, I feel so horrible, but I don't know her name. She had brought me a pair of scissors, and then there was another teacher in there. I don't know if I'm allowed to say her name. She also, we kind of like got together and just kind of came up with a plan.
What was the plan?
Do what we had to do, defend, keep quiet, wait until somebody came to get us.
And what were the scissors for?
I guess protection to fight if we needed to.
Okay. Under that stressful situation,
Yes.
you developed a plan
Yes.
to fight.
Defined?
To fight?
Yes.
And how about your kiddos?
They were doing the best they could to stay calm and quiet. They were doing what they were supposed to be doing. They had ended up getting safety scissors, I guess because they saw us with our scissors. We got theirs. I didn't even notice until we got to the parking lot.
The kids all had safety scissors,
Mm-hmm.
mimicking you all,
I'm sorry?
mimicking the teachers.
I assume so, yes.
That is preparing to defend yourselves.
Yes.
No, this is objective leading.
How long were you in this position?
I don't recall. It was all very, I don't know.
What did you do while you were there?
Where? In the classroom?
Yes, ma'am.
Help the kids stay calm, was ready to go. At one point, we just made sure we followed the rules. At one point, the 2 other teachers we were with, or I was with, they couldn't remember if the door was locked or not, or they just weren't sure. And so I remember being on the opposite side of the classroom, and they were tying an extension cord up into the door. I don't know how to explain it, but there's like a triangular shape metal frame that helps it open, and they were tying an extension cord around it to try and make sure it was, I guess, secured the best it could be if the door wasn't locked.
Okay. And that was the other 2 teachers?
Yes.
At some point, you were relieved or you evacuated, is that
Yes.
correct? Tell us about that.
We kept hearing knocking on the door, and we were taught, don't answer the door, somebody will come in and get you. But after several knocking, like times knocking, and again, I was on the opposite side of the room, one of the teachers, she peeked open the curtain to see, I guess, who it was. And it was law enforcement. And so at that point, she opened the door, they came and said, we're going to move you guys to the parking lot. So once everybody's ready, we're all gonna move quickly but safely to the parking lot and wait there.
And did you do that?
Yes.
And how did your day end then?
Got to the parking lot, and at that time I realized all the kids had scissors, so like, it's okay, we're okay. And I took all the scissors and had two big pockets. Both of my back pockets were full of scissors, and we sat there for a little bit and then ended up going to an empty field off of campus. And while we waited for buses, I still at this point didn't have all of my students, and so I gathered the ones that I did have, and I told them, stay here, we're not getting on this bus, and waited
For what?
for the rest of my kids.
And did you get them?
Yeah.
And then where did the bus go?
It was a little bit of confusion, I guess. We went to the high school, or we were supposed to go to the high school, and then on the way there, the bus driver was just kind of going in circles, and then we were told that the high school was on lockdown, so we wouldn't be going there, and then we ended up going to the Civic Center.
The what?
The Civic Center?
Okay. And is that where the kids were reunited with their
Yes.
parents? Okay. Thank you. We've gone through your day, and I want to just kind of go through so we have an idea of where all of this occurred,
Okay.
okay? Yes. Give you this. What we have is we have people on both sides, so it's real hard if we get in front for them to see what you're doing. So if you have to point at something, feel free to do that. I'll give you a second just to kind of familiarize yourself with State's Exhibit 1.
Okay.
Do you recognize State's Exhibit 1? And could you show us the perimeters then of Robb Elementary School? Okay. And so when you went to recess, where did you start?
I started here. Well, I was originally at the very beginning here in one of these classrooms, and then this is the library. So this is where I pick my kids up at.
Okay, let me ask, is the fourth grade wing there?
Yes.
Would you point out the fourth grade wing?
Here. And the library just
The
holds.
fourth grade wing, you point to it, it has 3 X's on it, is that correct?
Yes.
And then there's a building north of that, or is it still part of the fourth grade
It's
wing?
connected.
Excuse
It's part of it. It's connected.
Okay, and then so y'all had been in the library?
Yes.
Is it still somewhat part of the fourth grade
It
wing?
is in here. It's right here at the other entrance.
And you have to speak up a
I'm
little,
sorry,
because
at
now
the
you're
other
facing
entrance.
this way. So the library is where y'all had been,
Yes.
and then where did you go?
We walked, my classroom was on this wing right here, so we stopped.
Is that the second wing from the top?
Yes, it's wing B, so here's the main office parts, and then here's wing B. So we walked down this little sidewalk, went to the classroom, dropped stuff off, got our lunch boxes, and then followed the sidewalk all the way down. And it was about here that I heard the dumpster, what I thought was a dumpster. And then this is the playground. This is where we ended up at.
At that playground?
Yeah, and it's like this entire thing.
And is there another building right there at the bottom of the photograph that you were talking about?
Down here,
Right here?
that's the pavilion, the PE pavilion where they have the basketball court and where the kids.
Pavilion or pagoda?
Pavilion, I guess.
Okay. You call it a pavilion. And so where were the kids playing?
They were scattered throughout this entire area. There was several different pieces of equipment. They had, there was just tons for them to do, so they were spread out all through here.
All through and even behind the pavilion?
Oh, not this far. I would say they probably stop about here.
To the right, if I'm facing it?
Yes.
Okay, so could we go back then to where the Hillcrest Funeral Home is?
It's over here.
Right here?
Yes.
So from this position, what would be the line of sight to the pavilion?
From this
Yes,
right here. Correct.
to that pavilion?
Yes.
And so could you see the children playing where y'all were playing?
I'm sure if you were standing in the right spot, yes.
And so is that likewise where the puffs of dirt came up?
Possibly.
Okay. So were there shots being fired toward the pavilion area?
To my knowledge and experience, I thought so, yes.
So some suggestion that there was no evidence of shots being fired toward the pavilion is contrary to what you saw that day.
Could you,
Is that correct?
could you rephrase that? Sorry.
Louder.
Could you repeat your question? Sorry.
So some suggestion that there was no evidence of shots being fired toward the pavilion area, that would be contrary to your experience and what you saw that day.
Overall, you can answer if you understand the question.
Yes. To my knowledge, there were shots fired over here, and saw the dirt and
Okay. And where were they coming from?
from this area right here. Like they would be coming, and then the dirt was flying up about this area.
And where did you go when these things started happening?
The second grade wing is right here, closest to the playground. I ended up in the first classroom.
And before you got in that classroom, did you see somebody?
Yes, on the way to the classroom, I saw a person in all black and a long weapon.
And do you remember where he was?
Yes, he was over here, closer to he was around this area.
And are you marking there to the spot, southwest corner of the building and the parking area?
Yes, and to me, I guess in the moment, it looked like he was at this, there's an entrance, a door right there. I thought he was more on the sidewalk. If that's what I
Close to
saw.
the sidewalk?
Close to the sidewalk.
Okay. How much time did you spend to look at him?
I couldn't.
Just a glance?
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. Ask the witness.
Back across.
Please.
Thank you, Judge. Hi, Ms. Hale. Hi, my name's Jason Goss. I represent Adrian, and I guess I want to say first, I know that testifying and thinking about this stuff is hard. I can tell. I can see it. I think we all can see it. And nobody blames you for that because you went through a lot. And, I mean, all y'all out there went through a lot that day. Okay, so I say that to say I'm not asking these questions to make you relive that, to hurt you anymore. But do you understand it's important? I need to go through some of these things because we are in this case and they have made allegations against my client, so we need to talk about that, okay?
Yes.
Okay. So they kind of, Mr. Turner walked you through what was going on that day. I think one of the things you said was that you had your kids in library, and just so that I know, and I felt like, just so that I can understand exactly what, you would take them to the library, drop them off, then where would you go?
Typically, we would have we would all meet as a grade level team, but since it was a fun day, I guess, a ward day, we didn't have to meet. So that day, I went into the math interventionist room. I want to say it was like room 132, and we spent time looking through her manipulatives because she was going to retire, and I was going to take some from her.
Right, and I think you said that in your statement. You said manipulative.
Yes.
So we had it transcribed, and I thought the transcription was wrong because I said the word can't be manipulative.
Yes.
But
It's
it
so
is
students could manipulate and move to
Got it.
understand.
Okay, so that's kind of what I want to understand. So manipulative is like an object or something that they're using, and it teaches them a lesson about, I guess, whatever your lesson is.
Yes.
That you're trying to teach. Okay. And you said you were having to go over manipulatives with a person who was retiring.
Yes.
Was that for your benefit or for hers?
Both, I guess.
Do you see what I mean? Like, was she teaching you?
Oh, no,
something?
I was just going through what she had so I could use it in my classroom.
Understood.
So she was no longer going to be using it as she was retiring, so I was getting that from her.
Got it. So she's basically saying, look, I had these things I think your students could use.
Yes.
And you were saying yes, and let me see them, and this looks interesting. And okay.
Yes.
that does clear up a part of the interview. So I guess at the point where you go to the library, so you were going over that and decided, we don't have our meeting, our staff meeting or whatever, our team meeting, might as well go get the kids and give them extra time out on the playground.
Yes.
That sound right?
Yes.
Were all of your kids in the library at the time?
The ones who had stayed, yes.
And what does that mean?
So after the award, some of the students had left to go home.
Okay. And was that like a normal thing?
Typically after awards, yes.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess what I mean by that is, did the school say, hey, look, because we're talking about May 24th, real quick. May 24th, can you give us an idea that year, if you remember, can you give us an idea like how close to the end of the school year May 24th was?
Maybe a week or two.
Okay.
Not maybe, I don't know.
And I'm sure you're in grade school, so nobody's doing like finals or anything, but have you as the teachers, or at least have you guys already basically submitted all the grades that they were going to have, or were there still more grades that had to be submitted?
There were still more grades that I believe we had to do them for 4 weeks.
Okay.
So.
And do you know a park that's commonly known in Uvalde as Mexican Park?
Yes.
Okay. And can you just describe what that is?
I've never been there.
Oh, but you've heard people talk about it?
Yes.
And they call it Mexican Park because I think it's named after somebody famous in Mexico.
I guess.
But that's
sure.
what it's called there, right?
Yes.
The high schoolers, they have awards day too, or did you know?
Yes.
Okay, they have awards day. Do you know if it was pretty common throughout Uvalde, the Uvalde ISD, that on awards day, if you want to go home, parents want to take you out, do something fun, or you want to go to, you want to go shopping at the mall or whatever with your parents, or whatever those things, that would be a normal thing. They can take them out of school or they can take them home, and they wouldn't be in class.
Are you asking for, like, every child would do that, or?
No, I guess, do you know if it was like, because you're in an elementary school, and Uvalde has a middle school,
Yes.
and Uvalde has a high school.
Yes.
And I don't know really I'm really just trying to ask, 'cause I don't know your experience with the middle school and the high school levels, but it sounds like that they were having kind of awards and things going on in celebration on the same day from the high school level to the elementary school level. But you wouldn't know that.
No, I was not aware of that.
Okay. But you do know that in elementary school, not that every kid would go home, but if the kids wanted to go home, they would go home.
Yes.
Okay. And in fact, your kids that you talked about, the ones that you had that day, those were the ones that didn't go home with their parents.
Correct.
How big is, when we say your kids, we're talking about your class that you're responsible for.
Yes.
How big is it normally?
About 22.
About 22. And how many do you think or remember that you had that day?
I believe it was 12.
12. So probably, I mean, close to half of them had chosen to go home with their parents, or their parents chose for them to take them home.
Be a little less, yes.
A little less, right? So 10 out of the 22 had gone home.
Yes.
All right. And have you been a teacher anywhere else? Oh, you said Cal
Allen.
When you're at Cal Allen, was there something kind of a similar practice?
Yes.
Right. Is it pretty common that, when you have the fun day or whatever, kids go home, and then some kids who stay watch movies, right, in the classroom, and just generally maybe get more time at recess, a lot of different things like that on a day like that.
I guess, yes.
Right. And I'll tell you this, it'll seem like I'm asking you questions and you don't know why I'm asking them, because what the relevance is to you. But I'm not asking them, I guess I'm not trying to ask them to bother you with it. Do you understand? But I really just want to know, because I don't know. You're the teacher, you're the first teacher that we've heard from here, and I want to know from you what that policy, or kind of what that practice was on that day. You understand?
Yes.
As far as that goes. So after this happened and you went through it in detail, and let's go toward the point where you've got the kids that were remaining, and you've taken them to the playground, and you did that. I'm going to go through this map with you. But you said you took them to the playground that's sort of on the south side.
Yes.
Okay. And you said as you were on the way, you found or you heard something that sounded like a dumpster picking up the trash.
Yes.
Do you remember talking to Ranger Benson?
I wouldn't remember his name, no.
Do you remember speaking to a ranger
Yes.
on May 28th of 2022?
Yes.
And that would have been the interview that you did where you sat down with a member of law enforcement and they asked you about the things that happened that day.
Yes.
In May 28, 2022, how long after this had happened was that?
I'm sorry?
How long after this, what we're talking about here, how long after you were on the playground with the kids was May 28, 2022?
4 days.
4 days. So you would agree that your memory of what happened was fresh at the time that you talked to the law enforcement investigators?
Not necessarily. I mean, could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Sure. I guess what I'm really just trying to point out is that, as is common with all human beings, in the immediacy or in the immediate days after something happens, our memory about what happened is fresher or it's better than years later.
Years later?
Years
Yes.
later.
Yes, years later.
Sure. And so I kind of want to ask a few questions. And after this, and you know, I'm not saying anything one way or another. I kind of want to know what you've been able to see or learn or read or hear since that time. Okay. Now, I would assume, as somebody who is so closely involved and so closely affected by what happened, that you have looked at and examined the reports that have come out about what happened.
No, I have not.
Okay. You've never read one.
Nope.
You've never seen anything on TV?
I've seen, yes, but I have not in detail read. I don't care to, sorry,
No,
see that.
I understand. And I think some people would want to know, and then some people may not, and it's fine both ways. So as far as the Texas House report, you haven't read any part of it,
No,
or their conclusion?
no,
The Department of Justice report,
no,
the Department of Homeland Security report,
no,
the City of Uvalde report.
no,
Have you talked to other teachers since about
Yes.
what happened?
yes.
Is there any kind of support group that you have with the other teachers or other people who were there where you guys have talked about it together?
We did group counseling, but it was maybe 5 teachers 4 times within like 3 months.
Sure. And of course, like I said, I'm not asking these questions because there's anything wrong with that. I'm glad that whatever communications that you've needed to do, you've been able to do. But I want to go back to the interview. Because in the interview, do you remember talking in the interview, and do you remember the ranger asking you what happened, what you witnessed and what you saw?
I mean, it was a while ago, so I don't really remember the interview. I just remember where it was at.
Okay, and I guess what I mean is, did you understand that the purpose of him interviewing you is to ask you what happened on that day and what you witnessed?
Yes, I guess. I didn't know if it was, I thought it was mandatory we had to do it.
Sure, but I guess what I mean is that obviously when something like this happens and you're in the room with a ranger, a law enforcement officer, the reason you're there is to tell the ranger what you witnessed.
Yes.
Okay. Because, you know, in that interview, you did talk about, you heard a sound like a dump truck, right? You described it as a dump truck at the time.
Yes.
You know, you described it here as like a garbage truck.
Yes.
And trust me, to me, there's no difference. I think it's the same. And what you're describing, I don't know, everybody's probably heard it, and I just wanted to clarify. What you're describing as part of the sound is like
whenever it kind of takes up and dumps and like slams it back down and it boom, boom, like
Yes.
that kind of sound.
Mm-hmm.
And was that a common sound for you to hear on the playground? I know you said it was weird for the time, but is that a common sound for you to hear on the playground at Uvalde, or at Robb Elementary School?
At least once or twice a week, yes.
Okay, so do you know what dumpster would have been being emptied, or you just remember hearing that sound?
I just remember hearing the sound.
All right. And so, before you came here to testify today, because you said it's been years since you gave that interview,
Yes.
did you sit down with any member of the prosecution and discuss what you would testify about?
When? I guess, could you clarify the time frame?
Sure. I guess at any time after this event occurred, but before you came here to testify today?
Yes.
Okay, which is, there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to do, yeah, it's fine. But what I'm trying to do now is figure out, at any time when that happened during this interview, did they play for you this interview so that you could hear what you had told Ranger Benson before?
No.
Okay, so you've never heard any of this?
No.
So I have some questions. Well, you were there and present when you did the interview, but nobody's ever played it back.
No.
Because during that interview, you described going into the classroom and that you described the scissors, as you described for us today. But during that interview, 4 days after this happened, you never told Ranger Benson that you had seen anybody matching the description of black, wearing all black and long hair. Did
Okay.
you?
I mean, I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay. Let's talk about that fact, though.
Okay.
That would be a fact when you're talking to the ranger that you would think would be definitely relevant and important.
Yes.
Sure. And I'm not trying to get on you, but that's why I said the reason I have to ask these questions is because I think the prosecution will agree with me, the things you're testifying to here today are not the things that you said to the ranger at the time. Did you know that?
I'm sorry?
Did you know that?
No, I don't remember what.
Okay. Do you remember telling the ranger that the only way you found out there was an active shooter was your husband called you while you were in that classroom?
He did not call me.
Did he text you?
We were texting, yes, and he didn't tell me that there was an active shooter. He just told me to stay inside and be safe.
Okay. So if you had told the ranger at the time that your husband was the one that told you there was an active shooter, could your memory have just be different now?
I guess, maybe.
Did you know, I guess, or do you remember, when you talked to the ranger, you never told the ranger that you saw clouds of dust coming up from the schoolyard?
I believe that I did,
Okay.
because I remember telling my family what had happened that day. And
do not get me wrong, anybody who goes through a traumatic event remembers differently at different times. I understand that. But you would agree, though, that that would be a significant fact, just as if, just also as seeing somebody with a gun,
yes,
wearing all black and long hair on the south side of the building.
yes.
And I think what I'd like to do, is, I'd like to ask you to review your statement about what you said to the ranger. Because it seems to me like the stuff that you do not remember saying to him, that if you were able to review your statement, that would refresh your memory. Do you agree with that?
Possibly.
About what you said to him. If you watched what you said to him, it would refresh your memory about what you said to him.
Well, yes, obviously.
Sure. All right, I'd like to do that.
I have no objection, it's just not in front of the jury, is the way that works.
I understand. I understand. I'd like to have an opportunity to have her review her statement so that I can do a cross-examination that
How long is it?
I mean, what is it? maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if you want to take a 10-minute break, we'll bring you back out shortly. So, would everyone rise for the jury? They're saying 10 minutes, but whenever it's over with, we'll bring you back out.
Okay, so we've been watching this testimony.
Be seated in the courtroom.
Hold on a second.
You'll have it.
Your Honor, may I
Teed
approach
up.
May I approach the witness? Yeah.
Yep.
And do you need water or anything before we start?
That's what I'm gonna hear.
Okay, I'm watching here to make sure we don't miss anything.
Okay.
Oh, so they're gonna walk up to refresh her memory. So, I mean, on the original prosecution cross, this was quite powerful. I guess, are they gonna do this I guess they're gonna do this out of the presence of the jury then? Is that what's happening?
Yes.
Okay. So, you think we'll hear the audio of this?
When you're done.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that was the big question I had because they're keeping the feed on. So
Yeah.
if we get to hear the audio, yeah. Because you can't.
Okay, so now they've killed the audio.
Okay.
Because
So-
they're yeah. Go ahead.
The reason for this is you can't, if you're going to ask somebody, isn't it true that you said X before, you've got to give them the opportunity to review that statement before they say yes or no, I didn't say that. So, the idea is you just can't ambush somebody with a statement when they haven't read the statement. And so the first step is for the lawyer to say, would it help if I let you review your statement? So let's say it was just a written statement, a one-page written statement, then they very quickly in front of the jury read it and go, oh yeah, I did say that. In this instance, it's obviously a 10 or 15 minute audio statement.
Is it you think it's a misstep on the defense's part here not to do that?
It's going to depend on how different what she said is. If they could really be stepping into a trap where they look bad, beating up on this poor
'Cause she's a
teacher
who
former
protected
teacher,
her kids and
did
got
everything.
them inside.
That's right. Did everything we want people to do, right? Protect the kids. Poor lady has had to leave the teaching profession because of this awful incident. You've got to be really careful, and they're trying to be, but you don't want to be seen as beating up on her. So if I was them, I'm only going to try to contradict her with her statement if it's a huge point, if it's really important. If it's just a bunch of little minor things, it might not be worth, the juice is not worth the squeeze, so to say. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how different what she said previously. If it's how she first learned of the shooter, was it a phone call or a text? And I don't know how worth it that is, unless it completely undermines the powerfulness of her statement or her testimony previously.
Well, because I thought she said some really powerful things on when the prosecution questioned her, talking about how she made sure that she got every kid in so they were safe, right? That the way I was taking that is she put herself potentially in danger by making sure, in contrast, right? Because that's the contrast between the officer and her.
That's it.
That, she was doing these breathing exercises to calm a couple of kids down, and that the kids got safety scissors.
Boy.
And I just was like,
yeah, it really strikes
what kind
you
of
in
world do
your
we
heart.
live in that the kids grab safety scissors?
Yeah. Well, and also, I think it's if her testimony stands and the defense can't really undermine it, it's powerful testimony that if I'm the prosecution, I'm arguing, unlike Officer Gonzales, who stood by and did nothing,
Right.
this teacher grabbed a pair of scissors, and then her poor little elementary school kids grabbed scissors too, and the prosecutors...
That they were going to defend
they're gonna
themselves,
defend
that's the implication.
Yeah, well, the implication, the prosecution said, you had an active plan, you were going to fight, and she didn't fully understand him, so he had to repeat it, which frankly was good for him. You had a plan to fight, and she said, yes. Well, the implication being
And they obviously don't
unlike
have they don't
officer.
have a vest, they don't have a helmet, they don't have a gun, they don't have
Which
any of that.
it's almost like they knew the defense was going to go there, because the defense, I think, and definitely thought at the time, was doing a very good job with the state trooper to talk about it would be insanity to run in without proper equipment and all of that. That maybe what Officer Gonzales did wasn't so unreasonable, and then the prosecution very, I think, deftly counters with, well, this poor teacher has no safety equipment, no tactical training, and all she's got is a pair of scissors. And then these poor little kids grab safety scissors and they're going to fight. Why didn't he? I think it's very powerful testimony.
That made my heart hurt
Yeah.
as a parent.
Yeah.
That the idea that kids would have to even ponder in their minds such a thing.
Yeah.
That it would even, and sadly, mass shootings have become a part of their world. When I was growing up, I'm going to date myself, in the 80s, the worst thing that somebody might do is bring a knife to school.
Right.
And, ever since Columbine, kids live in a different world than what I grew up in.
You talked about, and they've referenced Columbine before. I mean, when I remember, like so many people, it's one of those moments, like, people say in 9/11, like you remember where you were. I remember exactly where I was during Columbine. I remember looking up at the TV screens. I was with a friend who was in college, and I remember looking up and seeing it and just being completely shocked.
Right.
It was something just, how could this be happening? This is unreal. And then just kind of standing slack-jawed at the TV screen. Just how profoundly sad it is that has become not shocking. I mean, it's always shocking, but it's no longer unusual. And
No,
yeah.
it's not. And that's I don't know. I don't really have any good answers for it.
Yeah, this witness, I mean, I think the prosecution, we were talking about who do we think the next prosecution witness was going to be, and I was thinking 911 operator. This is maybe, they're still, I think, in the kind of going sequentially. They're going in order.
Because we're getting the kids in. We're
right.
We're
This
kind
is
of like
early
in the scene, right?
But I think they did a good job of not, they went with boring officer. If they went with boring dispatch, maybe they were thinking lose the jury. Our narrative isn't all that compelling. This is a good way, and it's mid-afternoon. Everyone's a little tired. Their lunch is sitting heavy in their stomach. They're easy to get bored and maybe not pay as close of attention. This witness, I guarantee all the jurors are paying very close attention.
It's actually not unusual, it seems like, as I think back to trials I've covered, sometimes for the best testimony to come really late in the day when we're all a little bit tired and thinking, okay, it's wrapping up for the day. Because this, for me right now, this is the most compelling.
Yeah, and
besides
it's interesting.
Besides the funeral employee.
And it's interesting because the lawyers the prosecution is in somewhat control because they can call witnesses in whatever order they want, but they're not in control of when the breaks are, how long the other side cross-examines. So you never really know, is that witness going to fall at 1 p.m. or 4 p.m.? And so you have to, this is what I think a lot of people don't understand about what makes trials so difficult, is you have to have a plan. And you have to plan for what witness do I think follows which, and what's the most compelling way to put this narrative out. But then inevitably something's going to happen. The witness is running late, or a judge takes a break, and you start to worry about, am I losing the jury? Do I call this witness now? Do I wait? What do I do to try to grab their attention? So I don't know if this was a masterful plan by the prosecution to wake everybody up at a vital moment, or if this was just luck. But it's, yeah, you're right. I mean, here we are. End of the day, everyone's getting tired, but this is definitely compelling testimony.
Well, because I could, as she was describing the scene of getting those kids in and all that, I could see it in my head, right? I could kind of imagine it.
Yeah.
And I think she said those kids were second graders. They were elementary school for sure.
Yeah.
And it's just,
yeah,
it's hard.
It's incredibly hard.
But what you're saying though is that the defense has to be really careful here, because if you're seen as attacking this teacher,
why are you attacking this poor teacher? She's done nothing wrong. It reinforces every bad stereotype they have of the sleazy lawyer, the attack dog, and the defense has really made painstaking efforts to try to be very nice and to try to be very professional. And even when they're asking her questions, I don't mean to make this hard for you. They're
Right.
softening it as much as they can. I don't know their strategy, and I don't know what is in that statement because we don't have access to all the discovery. But I hope for them that it's worth
what they're doing.
what
right.
they're doing, because they really risk losing the jury.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons, other than this is a big case and there's a lot of evidence, there's a lot of witnesses, this is a big reason you have multiple lawyers, because if somebody's got to play bad guy,
Right.
it's one lawyer, and then hopefully that kind of taint of the jury may not like that guy very much doesn't rub off on everybody else, and so they I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know, and I guess, and I'll be very interested to see how. Again, memory is an odd thing, and this happened 4 years ago. But they were making a big deal out. They were making a big deal out of her saying that she saw, this horrible man walking towards the door, dressed all in black, and they're saying that wasn't in your original statement.
Yeah, and look, there's, like you're saying, memory is a difficult thing, and we talked about the science of things. Being a trial lawyer, I've dealt with this a lot. I've read a lot on this. Just because you remember something differently doesn't mean you're lying. It can be an indication that you're making something up. It can also be an indication that your memory has become corrupted. It's something you heard from somebody else. It's something that you imagined, and it's slowly in your subconscious convinced you that that's what you saw.
Which is why memory is it's actually interesting that we're talking about this, because that's one of the things in a lot of the criminal cases over the years that have been thrown out is eyewitness identification.
Yep.
Exactly that reason.
Yep.
Was that people would get up and testify in these court cases, adamantly, that's the guy.
Right.
Absolutely, unequivocally, that's the guy.
And
then,
what more powerful evidence can there be than eyewitness testimony? Well, now we know it's not worthless by any stretch, but it's highly problematic. And 50, 60 years ago, the general belief was that memory was like a videotape, right? You just play it, and maybe it's not perfect, but it is what it is.
My memory's perfect.
But the reality is every time
No, it's not.
Every time you play that
Right.
that videotape, you change it, and that's what the science tells us. And so maybe this teacher has talked about this multiple times. She's talked to her husband about it. She's relived it in therapy. Whatever it is, and
Right.
that has altered her memory.
Or it could just be that 4 days after the incident, that part didn't occur to her.
It could be.
Because, the trauma of this would be
Horrific. Just
horrific.
beyond
Doesn't
words.
even
Yeah.
begin to cover the having to get these kids inside, having to get them to be quiet, having to do breathing exercises so you can keep them quiet, having to eventually help them get out of the building, and then realizing that your colleagues are dead, that 19 kids have died, and that 10 kids have been injured.
Yeah.
Like that, you boggle the mind when you start to put it all together.
Yeah. I thought that the scissors part of her testimony was super compelling. I thought that the breathing exercise, I was just imagining her in that moment having the foresight to think back to when she was a special ed teacher,
Right.
to say, I know this technique, maybe this will help, and it did. And just imagining these poor kids in that moment, that working and them calming down. It really, from a trial strategy, trial theater, if I'm the prosecution, it's everything you want, because it is putting you in the moment in the most vivid way. right? Rather than just saying, this is what I saw, little things like the scissors, little things like the breathing exercise really
Oh, the scissors
make
kind of,
you-
like I said, the scissors just,
Yeah.
that hit me in the heart, you know,
Yeah.
because you could envision the little kids with their safety scissors. And she doesn't realize it till later that they've done that, right? And again, that speaks also to how our I mean, literally in a critical incident, your field of vision is altered. You just
Yep.
the way that you see and hear things, because your body goes into that kind of fight or flight type situation.
Yeah, and everybody's different. You know, we've been talking about how Adrian Gonzales appears. You know, while the video feed is on, we're seeing him. We've been seeing him a lot, and you know, some of the commenters talk about how he appears completely devoid of emotion, and you know, two things to that. Just like everybody perceives differently, everybody handles stress differently. You know, everybody handles emotion differently, and some people get numb, some people get stoic, some people cry. You know, also I think some of the commenters have pointed out that, and it's true, oftentimes defense counsel will caution their client to keep it in check, to not show emotion.
Right.
Because, you know, you're worried about an outburst, you're worried about, you know, because you know people are judging them. But it really is a lose-lose situation. If you make the wrong face this way or that way, you know,
Right.
why does he look so mean? Why does he look so happy?
Because you don't want to smile, you don't want to do. I mean, you
Yeah.
want to be like, because you also never know when that camera's on you.
Right. And you never know when those 12 jurors and the 5 alternates are looking at you. And so, you know, you want to look neutral, but then if you look too neutral, whatever that means, then now you have no emotion. So it really is difficult. You know, that's why when we talk about, you know, mugshots are so dangerous, because like, what does a good mugshot look like? I don't know.
I've rarely seen good
Yeah,
mugshots.
you know, if you smile, you're a sociopath. If you don't smile, look, he's evil. You know, whatever. So yeah, it's really difficult, really difficult.
So I guess they're going to continue. They're going to review this statement. It's taking a little longer than we expected, actually.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's been more than 10 or 15 minutes.
Does that make you think that there's a substantial difference, or what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, on the one hand, for the rules, if you're going to play the statement, you're going to play the whole statement. Unless there's one thing, I just have this one concern, let's just play this portion. But because there's been a lot of things, they're going to play the whole statement. And so that's going to be 10
You think
or
that's
whatever
what's coming
minutes.
next? Play the whole statement?
They've played the whole statement for her. Now what I would expect is going to happen is outside the presence, you know, has that changed her memory? And then, you know, yes or no, you bring back in the jury, and then you can decide, can you play the statement or not? The statement is hearsay. And so, you know, legal terminology, hearsay is any statement that's taken outside the courtroom, right? It's not testimony from the stand. So any, obviously, recording from the past is hearsay. If it is offered for the truth of the matter asserted, that's the legal terminology. Basically, if you're playing that statement because you want the listener to
Okay.
believe the statement.
Okay.
Okay.
You would agree with me in listening to the totality of your interview 4 days after, that you never tell the ranger that you saw anybody that was dressed in black with long hair and a fire and a gun.
Correct.
You agree that you never told him that you saw dirt flying up on the playground. That was, to you, I guess, putting 2 and 2 together, you felt like you were being shot at, which was your opinion.
Correct.
You never told the ranger any of those things.
I'm listening to that now.
Right. And that was 4 days after it happened.
Correct.
And you would agree he gave you every opportunity to say everything that you remembered about what happened.
Yes.
And seeing the shooter and seeing somebody with a gun on your school would have been something that you would have told him at the time.
I would think so, yes.
In the dirt and you connecting that to their bullets being fired in your direction.
Yes.
Okay. So the question I have is, when you talked to the prosecutor on those incidents, did you tell them those details about seeing the person in black and with long black hair or with long hair and a firearm? And did you tell them about seeing dirt being kicked up at the playground?
I believe so, yes.
All right, Your Honor. And so based on that, we have never gotten any notice from the prosecution, and that is clearly
an inconsistent statement with the statement that she gave. The prosecution has never provided us. This is clear under Brady, it's clear under Michael Morton, that if this is the first time that I'm hearing of this in a trial of this magnitude is when she testified on the stand about it. And so, if she did report these things to the prosecution, we were entitled to that to prepare for this. And this is a trial by ambush.
Okay, response?
We're checking to see if it is indeed part of the grand jury testimony that was turned over to them.
Okay.
It would definitely be a clear violation.
Let's wait a sec.
Yes. It's provided in the transcript that we provided to them on, what's 134. Here's the part which talks about the extension cord.
I agree that she said that before. I do not see in the I do see in the grand jury transcript there was talk about dirt flying up around the kids. I do not see where she described seeing a shooter, seeing a person with a gun matching the description of the shooter. And apparently she told the prosecution that before trial. I mean, Judge, that's an incredibly important detail that I'm finding out about now in front of the jury.
And how's that Brady or exculpatory, Your Honor?
Well, it's like insanely different. What I want to say is it is 180 degrees different than her prior testimony to the grand jury and her prior statement to the ranger. And it is of a matter of such importance because it has placed the gunman on the south side at the same place where my client was, where he responded to and where he went to. And so if this witness has told, and I understand witnesses testify, they remember things differently, but when the prosecution hears something that the witnesses remember differently than anything that we have, it's their obligation to provide that to us, because that would be what could be used for impeachment.
But we provided with the grand jury testimony that had about the dirt, whether or not it was a man in black, they've already stipulated that there's a man in black that was there.
I agree, but not at that location at that time. And this is a man dressed all in black, not just all in black, with long hair and a firearm and a gun.
Like there was more than one man in black and a gun.
But that's
at the south end of Robb Elementary.
The prosecution, I'm sure, is not trying to intentionally miss the point, which I'm sure that the court understands my point, which is it's not about who did the shooting. Of course, we all agree with that, but at what time, when and where and how, and what teachers had identified a shooter or had seen a shooter on campus?
Well, the location is pretty important, Mr. Turner. Do we have anything that you show in your notes? You turn that over to them?
About the man in black, no, Your Honor, I don't.
Specifically the location at that particular time?
Well, I guess the idea is the witness has testified that she told the state. Does the state acknowledge to the court that they were told that?
I believe so, sorry.
What?
Yeah. I mean, the thing about it is that this woman was initially interviewed, in a very traumatic event. So there's going to be things that she remembers, more as time goes on. But I agree with Mr. Turner, that's not exculpatory, you know, we all knew there, I mean, when saying to them, hey, there's a shooter, all black with a long rifle, is not information that they didn't already have throughout this case.
In opening statement, they said that Melody Flores said the man that was in all black, but she got the gun wrong. So this is
I
not
think
like
his
new
complaint
information.
is more to the location of the man in black in relationship to where his client was.
I don't think she said anything about where his client was, first of all.
She put him in-
Second of all, I think Melody, the testimony will be that Melody Flores saw him in the same spot that this woman has said it was. There's no new testimony there. There's no new evidence. There's nothing different than what they already know.
She never told us the specific location that she saw him, about that south end of the door. She never told us that.
Okay. So what are you asking for?
Well, can I have a moment?
Pretty quick, yeah.
Yeah, just need a little bit to talk to them.
Yeah. Finish the record, so go ahead. Before they ask for their remedy, we'll go ahead and ask your question.
As far as the conversation you had with the prosecutors and the man in black, did you discuss, or do you have a firm memory that you discussed where he was, or did you simply discuss him and you saw the man in black?
I don't remember. Are you talking like during the grand jury? During the grand jury, or when?
No, when you talked to the prosecutors in preparation for trial.
Oh, I don't remember, no.
You don't remember?
If I discussed a location, no.
And I'd also like to ask Miss Mitchell, do you have any notes that we're discussing where?
I guess if we're gonna take testimony, I'll tell you what, ma'am, let's do this. I don't want you going back up to the fourth floor. Could you go with one of our bailiffs and just step out in the hall momentarily, and we'll bring you right back in? Don't talk to anybody about the case if you do me that favor. All right, Ms. Mitchell, you'd raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the evidence in the testimony given the cause will be the true self you got?
Yes.
Mr. Turner, we can just do it from council table if nobody objects. Go ahead.
Thank you. Were you there and conducted an interview with Stephanie Hale?
Yes, the trial preparation.
And did you take notes as a part of that?
Yes.
Do you have any notes as to Ms. Hale telling the prosecution where the man in black was?
No, she told us there was a man in, when she looked, she saw a man in black with a long rifle. But she didn't tell us that he was specifically at that location at the south end on the sidewalk. She did say.
Thank you. And I'd also call Mr. Garza, Your Honor. Oh, I'm sorry, pass the witness.
Yeah, but clarify for me, what was in the grand jury testimony that you did disclose?
That there was dirt flying up.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Question?
Ms. Mitchell, the notes that you're referring to, on what date was that interview done?
I have to go back to my calendar. It was sometime in mid-December. It
Of
was right before Christmas.
2025?
Yes.
Were you the only prosecutor present at that interview?
No, it was me, Mr. Garza, and Mr. Turner.
All right. And you were conducting the interview?
No, Mr. Turner was.
And in that interview, the witness that we're referring to told you she saw a man dressed in black with long hair and a long rifle.
Right.
All right. And you noted that she had never said that before at the time that she said that.
I didn't note that. I just,
Well,
we're prepping her, so I can't say that I specifically noted that.
but I mean, you, in just the preparation, you would have noted that a fact like that an additional person seeing the shooter at the time before the shooter entered the building outside, you would have noted that as a significant fact. You would agree with that?
I would say that he was seen by several people, so one other witness saying they saw him, such as Ms. Flores, or, you know, was part of that.
All right, but I guess what I'm saying is that whether or not he was seen, you understand and know that not only is location important, but time is important. Where the shooter is at a certain time, you note that that is an important detail. Or
That is an important detail, but I wouldn't say that I was, at the time, had dissected the time frame with her to the point that it was so significant that it stood out to me.
Well, and I guess that you'd also understand that different witnesses at different points in time, viewing a shooter at in different locations, all of those things are important details as to know not just where the person was, but when in time the person was. And different witnesses will provide different times, right?
Right.
You understand that as a concept.
Right, I understand that.
And I'm not talking down to you, I'm just trying to make sure that, I know you understand it. I just want to make sure that it's clear on the record. And so, because this focus on whether or not she talked about the location, if that's the first time that she ever said location, and it just happened to be the location in trial that is where our client was, and now she's put the shooter on the south side of the building, on the sidewalk, looking like he's going into the building on the south side in trial today. Are you saying she never said that to you before? In your notes?
Okay, were you asking me two different questions, like seeing him there versus seeing him specifically on the sidewalk? The term "the sidewalk" today caught me off guard, because I had never heard that before.
Had you ever heard her say that she had seen him either going into the south side of the building or approaching the south door?
No,
Did she ever tell you that he was on the south side of the building?
no,
So nothing in your notes. Now,
no. Like I
okay,
said,
so here's my question. At a time when you're talking to a witness and for the first time they're telling you that they saw the shooter, neither prosecutor or anyone in the room thought to ask her, where did you see the shooter? That wasn't a question that came up in anybody's mind, to ask her where the shooter was?
You know, you're getting very nitpicky. Let me tell you something. When we were prepping these witnesses, I was running a law office, and so I was in and out of interviews. So I can't say that she said that and I, like, oh my God. you know, it wasn't that type of reaction for me, so that's the best I can say.
I guess, I know, but as a person present in the interview, I mean, this is who
What I
Mr.
can say
Turner
is
called.
today, when she said that he was on the south end, I was surprised. That's what I can say.
And we were too, or that she saw him at all. But you were not surprised, though, when she testified that she had seen him.
No, because she said that she had seen him. She said that during trial prep.
And so-
What she had seen is a guy with long hair with a gun.
And so you understand, with all the information that you provided us, and that your office provided us in discovery, you understand how we would be surprised that she testified that she saw him.
No, because I would assume that y'all knew that, given everything, given all the information that's been provided to y'all, that y'all would know that he's, the testimony, the evidence is that he's on that south end of that building shooting into room 102, right? And so if he's at 102, that's the farthest room on that end, on that south end, then somebody's gonna see him, because there's casings from that room.
But somebody is going to see him versus a person in a particular place at a particular time saw him has a lot of it's a whole different thing. You would agree with that? That's why I was asking that question. Place and time are both important considerations when we're talking about Adrian Gonzales' conduct. What he saw, what he could see, what he could know, what others knew. Those are all important considerations.
But we already have other witnesses that say that he was, that the shooter was seen at the south end of the building.
Right, and
We
you would.
have other witnesses.
Okay, and so.
So I didn't think that that would be a surprise to y'all.
Well, let me ask you this. So you say you have other witnesses that will say that. And now you have provided, you would agree, you have provided a witness that will corroborate those other witnesses, right? And make those other witnesses seem more credible instead of their testimony standing alone. Right?
Right.
Okay. And so that would be an important thing for us to know before we started this trial. And to know when you knew it. You would agree with him.
I would agree that that was already known, that was out there.
Well,
That's
I'm
why
not
I don't understand why it's a surprise to you.
Because you didn't report it when she told you that. That's why. Because you didn't turn it over when she told you that, and it was something she had never said before. And I think you will agree with me that has not been turned over by your office in any shape or form before.
Well, I would agree with you that I so asked you to come to my office and review our file. That was on the record. I said, I want y'all to come look through our complete file to make sure that you have everything. And that was agreed to, but then I was never contacted. So I did make our file available on the record before trial.
And you understand the prosecutor's obligation is not on the defense. The prosecutor's obligation
Now, I
belongs solely to
understand
the
that, but I wanted to
prosecution.
make sure that this is tons of evidence. I wanted to make sure y'all had everything, you know, made our discovery portal available, we gave y'all a server. I wanted to make sure y'all had everything. So I did make that available.
I'll pass the witness.
I had a few follow-up questions on timing, if I may. Ms. Mitchell, to start with, there are casings not only in front of 102, but also south of that. Is that correct?
Yes.
And those casings are not attributable to anybody other than the shooter. Is that correct?
That's right.
And both pictures and statements have been given as to that.
Yes.
Is that correct? And as far as timing, the only timing this witness has said is when she heard firecrackers, she headed to her building and saw the defendant. How many guns? Is that correct?
Right.
Did she say anything about Adrian Gonzales being there or not being there?
No.
Did she testify at anything about Adrian Gonzales being there or not
No.
being there? So the timing is simply that as she hears what she believes to be firecrackers and where there are casings, she sees the man in black. Is that correct?
Right.
And so how does that timing in any way impact Adrian Gonzales?
I mean, it's speculation in that sense, because she can't know our defensive strategy or what we're doing. But it's pretty clear, Judge, it's pretty clear that we have these things down to the second. The prosecution presented the things in a big blurb. We have it to the second, and the second matters, and every second matters. And so timing is important to the defense strategy. I'll just represent to the court. I don't need Ms. Mitchell to testify about
We
how important
have,
it is
we
to my
have the
strategy.
timing of when every shot was fired, including the shots at the south end, Your Honor.
Okay.
We do have exact.
Well, let's finish up the evidence that you want. Did you have any other questions of Ms. Mitchell? Any other questions?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, did you have any other follow-up, Cross, of Ms. Mitchell on?
I'd ask you to examine her records in camera, or her notes in camera, to find out if that's the
Did you
case.
want to call Garza or not?
Yes.
Okay, let's finish the evidence. All right. You solemnly swear the evidence in the testimony given the cause will be the truth, so help you God.
I did.
Go ahead. Yeah, let's do it for the witness stand. You're a little far away. Okay, thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Tell us who you are,
My name is Ricardo Garza Jr.
and what do you do for a living?
I'm an investigator for the DA's office in Uvalde County.
Were you present when Stephanie Hale was interviewed?
Yes.
And do you recall her saying anything about where the shooter was?
No.
Do you recall her saying that the shooter was in black?
Yes.
And did she say anything about the white car or Adrian Gonzales during that period of time?
No.
Did she ever give any testimony about seeing Adrian Gonzales or where he was in proximity to the shooter?
No.
And did she give any indication of timing?
No.
Was she looking at a phone, a cell phone, as to timing,
No.
whether in minutes or seconds?
No.
So she could give us no clue as to what time she saw the person in black.
Correct.
That's the witness.
Investigator, so I guess first and foremost, you would be willing to get on the stand and testify that the witness, and she testified, had never said before that this person was on the south side.
I don't recall her saying that.
Well, that's different than what you testified to, which is that she did not.
Well, she did not.
Okay. So as far as the person, that her telling you, you've looked through this file, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yes. And you know that it's significant when people were able to see the shooter, from the time that he went in the culvert, to the funeral home, to walking down, to the shots he was firing, and who could see him, and what was going on at the time. You know those are significant facts.
Correct.
Okay. And the shooter was apparently, I guess in this December 2025 interview that you were present for, a question was asked, or Ms. Hale told you guys in that room that for the first time that anybody knows that she saw the shooter with a black shirt, wearing black, long black hair, and a black and a long gun or a rifle. Yes?
She said that.
Right. And you recognize that to be the first time that she has ever said that to anybody.
I don't know if that was the first time she said to anybody.
Well, I guess to anybody in your investigation that would come over in discovery to us.
Correct.
You knew that was the first time she'd ever said it.
Correct.
And nobody in that room thought to say, where did you see him?
That was not asked.
Okay, so as an investigator, as prosecutors, you have a significant fact that's come out, and you're saying there was no follow-up questions to her saying that she saw a man dressed in black with a rifle and long hair. Nobody followed up. Nobody said where. Where were you and where was he when you saw him?
That was not asked.
As an investigator, do you understand that follow-up question would be a common question that any investigator or prosecutor that you know of would ask if somebody has come up and said a material fact like that? Where were you and where was he when you saw him?
Correct.
And nobody in that room asked.
Correct.
I'll pass the witness.
No further questions.
Okay, you step down, have a seat back at council table.
May I address the court on one issue, Your Honor? Yes, sir. I'd just like to point out that the indictment says and accuses Adrian Gonzales of the time that occurred after Melody Flores informed him where the shooter was. That's the time that is relevant and material to this case. Where the shooter was at any time before that has no bearing on Adrian Gonzales or his conduct in this case.
Well, we can't delve into their trial strategy, but I'm gleaning that there is some issue in that regard for the trial strategy. So, any other evidence on the matter?
Not from the defense, Your Honor.
Okay. Arguments?
I guess, well, the only thing that I would like to ask, because we started to speak to my client and then they put on more evidence, so I had to come sit over here. I'd just like a brief moment to talk to him. I mean, it's his case, it's his part of, I want to know how he feels about, because there's certain remedies that are severe.
Well, there's several remedies, Heath, et cetera, that we can talk about, but yeah, talk to him.
Thank you, Judge.
So this is pretty significant, right?
This could be huge. We don't know yet what the judge is going to do. We don't even know. So the last thing that defense is saying, they're hinting at, there are some really big remedies, and I'm going to talk about what those are in a second. But we need to talk to our client to see if he wants us to make that argument. And so what those remedies could be are the defense asking for a mistrial. Judge, because we argue that the state has violated the law. Under the U.S. Constitution, they've referenced Brady versus Maryland as a U.S. Supreme Court case that says the prosecution must turn over all exculpatory evidence. And then they've referenced the Michael Morton Act, which is Texas law, that basically says the same thing, what the state has to turn over when. And so if the judge finds that they did violate that by not turning over this information, then that could render the trial, basically unfair and therefore grant a mistrial. And that would end this trial and, would start over from scratch. So this is a huge moment. It's really big. And,
Is this sloppy on the prosecution's part?
Yes, but.
Okay.
Typical lawyer answer. This is not uncommon. So I deal with a lot of different DA's offices from, I'm focused here in Dallas, so all over the kind of the Dallas North Texas Metroplex area, and all of those different DA's offices have varying different degrees of how open their file policy is. The safest thing to do, in my opinion, for the prosecution is also what the defense wants, which is a complete open file policy. Meaning, not only do we get all the evidence, all the police reports and the original witness statements and all that, but if you meet with a witness, if you call a witness, if you interview a witness, if you prepare one of your witnesses for trial, we want notes on what was said. And the reason for that is, if they've been saying the light was green, the light was green, and then they tell you the light was red, that's a change. And that change may be important. And if that change is very important to the case, then it could be so important that you want to turn it over. I say it's the safest thing to do to have a completely open file policy, because right now the prosecution is forced on their back foot to say, what do we remember her telling us?
Right. This is not a good look. The prosecution doesn't want to be on the stand, and they don't want their investigators on the stand like this. This is not.
No lawyer wants to be put under oath and testify in their own trial. It's not a good look. I guarantee the judge is not happy right now with them because this is in putting the entire trial in jeopardy, which is frankly a waste of the taxpayers' money and everything else.
Well, let's stop for a second, because one of our commenters is saying, hey, that they were stepped away for a little bit and they want to make sure.
Yeah.
So
let's reset.
In case you stepped away for a little bit, we had a teacher from the school was on the stand, and she was testifying about what she saw and heard that day, and she described that she had saw dust kicked up, and she described seeing a man in black with a rifle
with long
walking
hair
on the south side.
Yep.
Well, unfortunately, that testimony, that description, she did not give that description to the ranger originally when she spoke to the law enforcement 4 days afterward. She met with the investigators, she met with the prosecutor's office back in December, and they re-interviewed her, which is not unusual because they'll prepare a witness for trial. And in that interview, she described having this man, seeing this man in black, but they're saying she never mentioned he was on the south side.
That's right.
And they're saying, well, we opened our files to you and you didn't come over and get it. Essentially, I mean, I've summed that up pretty well.
Yeah. And earlier we talked about when the state was making, when the defense was grilling into this poor teacher, we said, oh boy, this is risky. She's been very, very likable, very compelling testimony. You don't want to be seen as beating up on her. And I said, it better be a big issue. Well, this is why. Because we don't have access to every piece of evidence the way they do. They knew their case backwards and forwards, and they knew that's not what she said. Not only is that not what she said, but it's really different. Why is it different? Well, because the south side is the side that Gonzales is on. And they're saying he doesn't have line of sight. He never had a line of sight. And they said that in their opening statement. From a defense lawyer standpoint, you say, look, I would never have made that argument in front of a jury had I had any evidence from the state, which they're required to give me, that gave me any indication that that may not be true. Now the state has basically laid a trap for me that I stepped into, and I look disingenuous in front of the jury when the reality is I was arguing based on the evidence they gave me. So they whether they meant to or not, they set a trap, and now my client's not going to get a fair trial.
Do you think they intended to set a trap? It doesn't feel like it.
No,
it feels
I
like
don't
it's
think so.
just the prosecutor, and I don't know her name, maybe the folks out in the comments have caught her name, but the female prosecutor said, well, I opened my file and you said you can come on over. What do you say to that?
That is not the way the law works. So the prosecution has the affirmative duty to tender to the defense any exculpatory evidence. It's not come over and view it when you want.
They have the duty.
They have the duty. Especially, if I can view your file, how can I view your memory of what that witness said in a prep session? That's not in your file. That's not a witness statement. This is why really good prosecutors I've worked with, I had a case in Denton where I was shocked. It was the first time I'd ever had a prosecutor who literally every prep session he did, he turned over his written notes of literally handwritten of while he's talking to the witness. And there's no argument that he gave me everything. And that's why when I said, the safest thing to do is just turn over your file, the prosecution should take notes and they should turn over those notes. And oftentimes I think prosecutors say, well, it's work product, this is our inner strategy. The reality is, unless it really is notes on your strategy, they should probably be turning it over, not just for fairness to the defense, but to protect themselves, because ultimately it's better for them, it's better for the system, it's better for a fair trial.
I know one thing, the judge does not look happy.
He does not look happy because he knows.
So you'll approach the bench real quick. I'm going to
Okay, they just killed the mics again in the courtroom.
Which is not surprising because they're having an off-the-record conversation. So it's not surprising. The jury doesn't get to hear this. We don't get to hear this. It's going to be interesting because the defense has just had a conversation with their client to say, do you want us to argue? Do you want us to argue?
Do you want to call for a mistrial?
Right, because look. It is probably a long shot. I don't think it's a Hail Mary. I really don't. I think there's a real chance the judge grants this because it is a big violation if he thinks it is a violation. But, from a defense strategy standpoint, the jury hasn't got to see any of this. So all the jury would get to see is they get brought back in. This defense stands up and says, we move for a mistrial. If the judge denies it, it almost appears like the defense is
beating up on the
straws,
teacher,
beating up on the teacher, making ridiculous arguments.
And they're not lawyers, so they don't understand.
They don't know.
I think for folks out here, let's talk a little bit about the genesis. We've talked about Michael Morton. We've talked about Brady. why does Michael Morton exist? This is a really important law. How did this come into existence?
Yeah, I mean, the way to start with that is who is Michael Morton? Well, he was a wrongfully convicted and eventually exonerated person in Texas. And the genesis of that was that if you turn over all the evidence, we don't get wrongful convictions. And so in the old days, we very frequently would have trial by ambush, where the state would turn over almost no information. You know, my very first murder case that I ever handled was in like 2006 or 7-ish, and murder case, and I was given about 20 pages, and that was it. So that's the way things were back then. It very much was trial by ambush. Almost no information was given, and thank God the Texas legislature decided that that was unfair, both to defendants, but also just to the concept of justice. And so now that's Brady, that's Michael Morton, is you have to turn over everything.
Right, it's a whole different world.
The jury. Yeah, please.
All rise for the jury.
Come on up, ma'am, and have a seat. Witness stand. Okay, please be seated in the courtroom. Ladies and gentlemen, we had to take up a matter required by law outside your presence. As I've told you before, please don't hold it against either side. We need to, because of issues that arose during that hearing, we're already going to have to quit tomorrow for the medical appointment at noon or 1 o'clock, so we were not going to be here in the afternoon. To further deal with this issue, I'm going to continue this matter till Thursday morning at 9 o'clock for the jury. We will be here tomorrow dealing with a matter outside your presence, but I'm continuing the jury until 9 a.m. Thursday morning, and hopefully all the other issues can get resolved during that period. So thank all of you for your consideration and your patience. It's very, 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 very important with this day delay that you remember my instructions and do not read anything, watch anything, or listen to anything that may be in the media about the case. Don't make any personal investigations. Don't talk to anybody about the case, and don't let anybody talk to you. We will start on time, 9 a.m. Thursday, with this witness back on the stand. So have a good day off. I hope everything works out otherwise, and we'll see you at 9 a.m. on Thursday. Would everyone rise for the jury? You're excused for the evening. Thank you all very much. Okay, you can be seated in the courtroom. Ma'am, we're doing that continuance because of some issues that arose, and what I'd like for you to do is be back on Thursday morning at 9, but this is very important. The rule has been invoked, and it is a specific rule concerning witnesses, and it means you cannot talk to anyone about the case, about your testimony you gave in here today, or anything about the case to anyone other than the lawyers. That means family members, spouses, anybody, until you're told the case is over with and you're released from the rule. All right? We'll see you back here 9 o'clock Thursday. We'll see you all 1:30 tomorrow.